In the ancient world, China stood as a beacon of civilization on the eastern edge of the Eurasian continent. Emperors and dynasties, philosophy and warfare, innovation and artistry, these forged the most advanced society on earth. This is the story of how Imperial China reached its zenith, fell to foreign conquest, and rose again. In the early 7th century CE, China was emerging from centuries of division. For nearly 400 years, the land had been split between rival kingdoms in the north and south. War, instability, and suffering had become the norm. But in 618, a new dynasty seized power and changed everything. The Tang Dynasty was born. Under Emperor Taizong, the Tang armies reunified China and expanded far beyond its traditional borders. They conquered territories in Central Asia, Korea, and Vietnam, creating an empire that rivaled Rome at its height. The capital, Chang'an, grew into the largest and most cosmopolitan city in the world, home to over 1 million people. Its streets bustled with merchants from Persia, India, and Arabia. Buddhist monks, Nestorian Christians, and Zoroastrians all found sanctuary there. This was the Silk Road at its peak. The Tang Dynasty ushered in a golden age of Chinese civilization. The imperial examination system was perfected, allowing talented men from humble backgrounds to rise through meritocracy. Poetry flourished as never before. Masters like Li Bai and Du Fu created works still celebrated today. Buddhism reached its zenith in China with magnificent cave temples carved into mountainsides. The wealthy wore silk robes in vibrant colors, enjoyed tea ceremonies, and pursued arts like calligraphy and painting with religious devotion. But this golden age could not last forever. By the 9th century, the empire was showing cracks. Military governors in the provinces grew too powerful, challenging imperial authority. Peasant rebellions erupted as taxes climbed and famines spread. The once mighty army weakened. In 907, the last Tang emperor was deposed. The dynasty that had made China the envy of the world was no more. Chaos had returned. For the next 50 years, China fragmented once again. The period known as the 5 Dynasties and 10 Kingdoms saw warlords carve up the empire's corpse. In the north, 5 short-lived dynasties rose and fell in rapid succession. In the south, 10 independent kingdoms fought for supremacy. It was China's dark age, a time of constant warfare, economic collapse, and cultural decline. The dream of a unified empire seemed dead. But in 960, a general named Zhao Guanyin staged a coup and proclaimed himself emperor. He established the Song Dynasty and set about reunifying China. Though the Song never matched the Tang's territorial extent, northern territories remained in barbarian hands. They created something perhaps more remarkable: the most economically and technologically advanced society in medieval history. The Song Dynasty revolutionized China. Agricultural innovations led to massive food production. New strains of rice allowed multiple harvests per year. The population exploded, eventually surpassing 100 million. Cities swelled to unprecedented sizes. Kaifeng, the northern Song capital, became home to over 1 million inhabitants, with markets that never closed and streets lit by lanterns through the night. This was China's commercial revolution. For the first time in history, paper money was introduced, facilitating trade on an enormous scale. A sophisticated banking system emerged. Iron production reached levels not seen in Europe until the Industrial Revolution. Merchant ships with multiple masts and watertight compartments traversed the seas, making China a naval power. The Song Dynasty became an engine of innovation. Gunpowder, first discovered in Tang times, was now weaponized. Rockets, bombs, and primitive cannons appeared on battlefields. Movable type printing transformed a scholarship, making books widely available. The magnetic compass revolutionized navigation. Neo-Confucianism emerged as a new philosophy, reshaping Chinese thought for centuries to come. Song paintings captured misty landscapes in ink-wash masterpieces that defined Chinese aesthetics. But military weakness haunted the Song. To the north, the Khitan Liao dynasty and later the Jurchen Jin dynasty controlled territories that once belonged to China. The Song paid massive annual tributes to keep these barbarian states at bay, a humiliating arrangement that drained the treasury. In 1127, Gurkhan invaders captured the Song capital and forced the court to flee south. The northern Song had fallen. The southern Song, ruling from the new capital of Hangzhou, continued for another 150 years. Despite controlling only half of China, it remained immensely wealthy and culturally vibrant. Marco Polo would later describe Hangzhou as the finest and most splendid city in the world, but China's fate was about to change forever. Far to the north, in Warshuaibab, the harsh steppes of Mongolia, a new power was rising. Temujin, better known as Genghis Khan, united the Mongol tribes and unleashed them upon the world. These were nomadic warriors, legendary horse archers who lived for conquest. Between 1206 and his death in 1227, Genghis Khan carved out the largest contiguous land empire in history. His grandson, Kublai Khan, turned his attention to China. For decades, Mongol armies battered Song defenses. They brought with them new siege technologies and ruthless tactics. Chinese cities that resisted were annihilated, their populations massacred as warnings to others. In 1279, at the naval battle of Yamen, the last Song forces were destroyed. The boy emperor drowned in the sea. For the first time in history, all of China was ruled by foreign conquerors. The Yuan dynasty had begun. Kublai Khan established his capital at Dadu, modern-day Beijing, and proclaimed himself Emperor of China. He adopted Chinese customs and administrative systems while maintaining Mongol identity. The Yuan dynasty was a paradox, brutal conquerors who presided over cultural flowering. They connected China to the wider Mongol Empire, creating the largest unified realm the world had ever seen. The Silk Road became safer than ever before, allowing unprecedented exchange between East and West. It was during Yuan rule that Marco Polo arrived in China, serving in Kublai Khan's court for 17 years. His account of China's magnificence, its vast cities, paper money, coal burning, and sophisticated postal system, seemed like fantasy to Europeans. Chinese innovations flowed westward. Printing technology, gunpowder weapons, and the compass would transform Europe. But Mongol rule bred resentment. The Yuan imposed a strict ethnic hierarchy, with Mongols at the top and native Chinese at the bottom. Heavy taxation and forced labor sparked rebellions. Natural disasters, floods and famines, were interpreted as signs that heaven had withdrawn its mandate. By the mid-14th century, the empire was crumbling. The Black Death, which devastated Europe, also ravaged China and the Mongol domains. In the chaos, rebel movements emerged. Buddhist secret societies, peasant armies, and bandit groups all fought for control. From this turmoil arose a peasant's son named Zhu Yuanzhang. Rising through military genius and political cunning, he united the rebel forces. In 1368, his armies captured Dadu, forcing the last Yuan emperor to flee north to the steppes. Zhu Yuanzhang proclaimed himself emperor. The Ming Dynasty, meaning brilliant, had begun. Chinese rule was restored. The early Ming emperors rebuilt China with vigor. The capital moved south to Nanjing, a symbolic return to Chinese traditions. But Emperor Yongle, the third Ming ruler, had grander ambitions. He moved the capital back to Beijing and launched one of history's most extraordinary maritime expeditions. Between 1405 and 1433, the eunuch Admiral Zheng He commanded 7 massive naval expeditions across the Indian Ocean. His treasure fleets dwarfed anything Europe would produce for centuries. Ships over 400 feet long, with crews numbering in the thousands. Zheng He reached the coasts of India, Arabia, and East Africa. He returned with exotic animals, precious goods, and tribute from foreign kings. China's naval power was unmatched. The world had never seen anything like it. But then, abruptly, it ended. Conservative Confucian officials convinced the emperor that such expeditions were wasteful extravagances. The treasure fleets were disbanded. Ships were left to rot in harbors. China turned inward away from maritime exploration, just as Europe was beginning its age of discovery. It was a decision that would reshape world history. Yet the Ming Dynasty was far from stagnant. Emperor Yongle oversaw the construction of the Forbidden City, a vast palace complex in Beijing that symbolized imperial power. The Grand Canal was restored and expanded, connecting north and south. The Great Wall, which had existed in its segments for centuries, was rebuilt and unified into the massive fortification we know today. These construction projects showcased Ming engineering at its finest. The Ming period saw extraordinary cultural achievements. Blue and white porcelain reached perfection, becoming China's most famous export. Ming furniture, with its elegant simplicity, influenced design across Asia. Literature flourished with the great novels of Chinese tradition, Journey to the West, Water Margin, and others that remain classics. Gardens in Suzhou showcased landscape architecture as an art form. The economy boomed. Chinese silk, porcelain, and tea were desired worldwide. Silver flowed into China from Spanish America and Japanese mines, fueling prosperity. Cities grew larger and more sophisticated. The merchant class expanded, gaining wealth and influence. But this prosperity attracted attention from outside. On China's borders, new threats emerged. In the north, Mongol tribes still raided periodically. In the northeast, the Jurchens, ancestors of the Manchus, were consolidating power. Along the coast, Japanese pirates, known as woku, terrorized fishing villages and port cities. The Ming Navy, neglected after Zheng He, struggled to defend the long coastline. By the 16th century, European ships appeared in Chinese waters. Portuguese traders reached China in 1514, followed by the Spanish and Dutch. They brought silver for trade and Christian missionaries seeking converts. The Jesuit priest Matteo Ricci gained access to the imperial court, impressing Chinese scholars with European science and astronomy. These contacts marked the beginning of sustained European-Chinese exchange. But internal problems were mounting. The imperial examination system, once a meritocracy, became rigid and corrupt. Eunuchs gained excessive power at court, forming factions that undermined governance. Emperors grew weak and isolated in the Forbidden City. Tax collection faltered while military expenses soared. Peasant uprisings erupted across the countryside. The late Ming period was plagued by natural disasters. The Little Ice Age brought crop failures and famine. Epidemics swept through the population. Social order broke down. In the 1630s, massive rebellions consumed the empire. The rebel leader, Li Zicheng, captured Beijing in 1644. The last Ming emperor hanged himself on a hill behind the Forbidden City. The dynasty that had restored Chinese rule and built such magnificence had fallen. But the story didn't end there. The Manchus, the Jurchen descendants from the northeast, seized the opportunity. They marched south, claiming they came to restore order and avenge the Ming emperor. In reality, they established their own dynasty, the Qing, which would rule China for nearly 3 centuries, becoming its last imperial dynasty. Looking back across these 1,000 years, from the cosmopolitan Tang to the maritime Ming, China had reached heights of cultural, economic, and technological achievement unmatched by any other civilization. It had survived fragmentation, foreign conquest, and repeated crisis, each time rebuilding itself stronger than before. The inventions that emerged, printing, gunpowder, the compass, and paper money, would revolutionize the entire world. But the decision to turn inward after Zheng He's voyages proved fateful. As China retreated from the seas, Europe expanded outward. The Spanish and Portuguese explored the globe. The Industrial Revolution transformed the West. By the 19th century, the balance of power had shifted. European powers would force China to open its ports through military might, beginning what Chinese historians call the Century of Humiliation. Yet the legacy of Imperial China endured. Its philosophical traditions, artistic achievements, and technological innovations shaped not only Asia, but the entire world. The examination system influenced bureaucracies globally. Chinese porcelain, silk, and tea became universal symbols of refinement. The Great Wall stands as a testament to human ambition and engineering, and the idea of China as a unified civilization, despite periods of division, has persisted for thousands of years. This was Imperial China, a civilization that reached for the stars, fell to earth, and rose again. Its story reminds us that history flows like a river, sometimes calm and prosperous, sometimes turbulent and destructive, but always moving forward, shaping the landscape of human civilization.